Goucher. I'm also from Goucher, and today I'm going to be giving you my capstone presentation as well that I did just a few months ago. This is my senior research project, and I've researched Jewish mystical tradition of Kabbalah. I'll go into that a little bit for those of you who have never heard that before. The concept of divine femininity and like the feminine as a whole, and how that understanding that information can be implemented and should be implemented in dance movement therapy interventions. Okay. All right. So before I do this real quick, I'm gonna speak a little bit about why I decided on this topic, because while I was raised in a very religious Jewish community, I had only heard about Kabbalah last year, and that like completely changed my life. It changed my perception of like my surroundings and how I interact with life, and I really felt like it gave like a whole nother depth to like how I function. So I felt empowered as a woman in my community and as a dancer, and I really felt like that could be like combined. It really could be put into my dancing. And through my research, I found that I was right. And I found that the process that was best for this was through dance movement therapy. It really gives the ideal space for that exploration. So the qualities of dance therapy enables participants to individualize the experience to service their own journey, as that is, it's not just one size fits all. So when a person is spiritually inclined or even just looking for a deeper connection to their surroundings, DMT for short can be used to channel a connection through the body. So now Kabbalah. Kabbalah is a Jewish mystical tradition that explains the way the world was created and why it was created that way. It kind of explains like functionings of another realm of existence. You can like imagine that, like it's beyond just physical, there's like another realm of something happening beyond what we see and perceive. And according to Kabbalah, so this is this understanding, God's infinite light was passed down through 10 vessels called sphirot until it reached the world. It passes through Malchut at the bottom, which means kingdom, until it enters the world. So that's yellow to signify the light, passing through all these different emanations of divine energy. So each one has a different like quality of divine energy. Like this one is understanding, or knowledge and understanding. Come back, please. Oh, sorry about that. All right. We got this. Okay. Yeah, so we have like strength and beauty and all these different like qualities all in there. They're in Hebrew in case that's why they look for. So a very unique component of Malchut at the bottom is this feminine aspect of God specifically, which is called the Shekhinah. It's what we refer to as divine femininity in Kabbalistic concepts. So Malchut represents the power of expression, because it really takes these like abstract spiritual ideas and puts them into concrete creation in the physical world. That's like the closest connection. So some believe that through dance and its cathartic nature, the Shekhinah, this feminine aspect of God, is drawn into the earth, to engage in spiritual healing and like to engage in just healing in general. So in this, dance really has the power to transcend physical limits and connect to the divine feminine and throughout the world of like spirituality. So that's like a cool little concept about that. Next, I'm going to speak a little bit about history of women's dance as ritual according to Jewish traditions. So I understand that this is just one aspect. But according to the Bible and other texts from that time, dance was a ritual that was exclusively practiced by women, actually. So this belief comes from the wording. The word for the traditional circular dance is mecholot, which is in the feminine form of the word, and it's only seen when referring to women. So that's like a cool little thing that I noticed in my research. At the time, it was recognized that women had their own unique connection to spirituality, and they expressed it through engaging in this form of like ritual ecstatic dance. There are several other accounts of this, many. I just listed a few here. One that's very prominent is in Exodus, when Miriam the prophetess led the Jewish women in song after the Jews were saved from the Egyptians. And she was a spiritual leader, so it's understood that this dance wasn't just a celebration, but it was like a religious ritual in nature, like a spiritual ritual in nature, in its nature as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about the influence of modern dance, because I'm sure these names are familiar to many, especially if you've taken any sort of dance history class. Isadora Duncan with St. Dennis and Martha Graham were all very into this idea of spirituality and movement. This was 20th century US, really. They recognized body as a divine vessel, kind of, that could be used for greater spiritual revelations, so to say. This really came about it really was, but this is the same with dance movement therapy, with psychoanalytic theorists like Freud, who said like psyche and emotion are connected, and all these dancers were like, hold on, yeah, they are. So that's kind of where that came in, and then also dance therapy, which is kind of like going on at a similar time. So these women advocated for turning into the body and learning natural rhythms to release that creative energy. By aligning the body and mind, they believe that one can tap into the body's subconscious impulses and discover like divinity within. So for example, Ruth St. Dennis once said that she felt she embodied the Shekhinah, like this divine light, this luminous light, just direct quote, among the world, and she found it her duty to share her divinity with her audiences and her peers. So she was like, I am a light in your lives, and like, let me shed my light onto you guys. She was like, I did this through dance, and like, let me preach. You can do it too, right? So that was like Ruth St. Dennis's jam. And then also, we may be familiar with a famous quote by Martha Graham, dance is the hidden language of the soul. She focused on centering the body and using breath work a lot to open access to like divinity within. A lot about like aligned chakras also. These women all pulled from like anything that they could connect with, and they were like, this is good, this is good. A lot about Virgin Mary, a lot of also chakras, like anything that they found was like cool about spirituality and like inner peace, they went with it, so. I'm so sorry. Look at my nice pink background. It's very.
Apologies on behalf of our school's budget.
That is okay. I really love you guys have so many studios that you can convert one into a classroom. We have like 4. All right, so now moving into the dance movement therapy realm, because also this is not a topic that's talked about often enough, in my opinion. I was looking into getting my master's, so we'll see, but I really like it. So DMT. These are some people who are at the forefront of the dance movement therapy cause, I guess, the development of dance movement therapy. This definitely became more popular with psychoanalytic theorists. At the time, there were many, but Freud was he was kind of like the father of it. So Marion Chase is actually the first recognized dance movement therapist. She encouraged clients to like gain the sense of self-discovery through movement, and she recognized that one could communicate through the body on like a nonverbal level, and that wasn't really so accepted at the time. It was like, speak to me, or like, what else do you have to say? And she said, you don't need to speak, you can use your body, and like it'll tell you more than words ever could. So a number of practices are implemented, I just listed a few, are implemented in dance therapy sessions to evoke self-awareness. That includes authentic movement, a lot of breath work, and like monitoring your breathing, using mirroring with partners, and group sessions, so you can get like the energy of other people in the group. A lot of benefits to that as well, but I'm not going to go into all of it, don't worry, I'll spare you. All right, so now we're putting it all together. Spirituality and dance movement therapy for women or feminine. So there are many ways that spirituality can present itself in dance movement therapy interventions, especially since it's such a broad field. There's no specific place, like this is where we practice dance therapy. It can be used in a number of settings for really whatever the needs are. Like you can apply it to that specific individual and kind of like mold that experience for them. So there's a concept within Kabbalah called Shirat Hykelin, like in this mystical tradition. Let me see if I can go back. Yeah, okay. So this idea of Shvirat Hykelin means breaking of the vessels. So this idea is that when the divine light first entered each of these vessels, it was too intense and like the vessels shattered like a jar. They just shattered and like fell into a million pieces and fell to the earth with their like little sparks flying everywhere and all that. So that wasn't gonna work. Also you see here there's an intermediate one. That one's kind of like the culmination in case you're wondering. Yeah, so that wasn't gonna work. So then when the vessels were put back together, each vessel was supported by all the like each dominant one was supported by the rest of them. So now it was no longer just people or strength, but that was the dominant one, but it also had some understanding, and it also had some wisdom, and it also had some beauty and kindness, and like all these different qualities like supported that dominant one in its own vessel, creating like a bond that was much stronger than it had ever been. So now I'm going back in therapy. Dance movement therapy or regular therapy. This concept is that breaks are not necessarily a bad thing, but rather they enable the opportunity to create something that was stronger than it may have ever been before, like it endured that kind of like stress. So dance movement therapy really does enable that work. The body expresses those innermost pains and informs one of the areas that need extra attention and need extra healing. And it opens a person up by like accessing the body, and like literally will open up those sections to helping a person feel comfortable breaking down barriers for the betterment of their quality of life. Like getting comfortable with the idea that breaks are not a bad thing unless it's your leg. That is a bad thing. Don't break your leg. Yeah. So hypothetical breaks,
not actual breaks.
Yeah. So another concept that's very strong here is breath awareness. Some argue that breath awareness and meditation practices, especially there's a number of meditation practices that are used in dance therapy, those can lead to soul access. I read a bunch of papers on this and I thought that was really interesting. So this was a major concept for Martha Graham, which is why breath work is such an integral part of her technique. You know, like when she sits in center, it's all about like, yeah, she does this one a lot. And it's all about like centering and like coming from the pelvis and like out through your breath. So that was a big thing of hers, and we also see that like through dance therapy. Another idea is that sparks of divine femininity can be released through movement, where authentic, uncontained expression of self can lead to self-discovery. So often when a person approaches therapy or dance therapy, it's because something isn't working right. There's a lacking in their life, and they're really some sort of emptiness. So with movement and its introspective nature, a person can learn to release those inhibitions, kind of get more whole with themselves. Thank you. Now lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about community, because Judaism places a very strong significance on community. It's a big thing to live where you'll have like other people to support you, and you'll do things for the betterment of each other, really just supporting one another and having that like unconditional support. That's like a really big concept. So using this concept of community in dance therapy, that can translate to having group sessions, which really would create a much more familiar space for these women because they know that they have the support of other people in the room. But beyond that, it also teaches these like women who are very, very familiar with concept of community to advocate for themselves as an individual in a communal setting, because often you can get lost in the sauce. So to say, you really get lost in the group. So this kind of teaches one how to like still maintain that sense of self in a very safe space. Now I'm just gonna wrap it up a little bit. Cute little final thoughts slide. So while spirituality and even Kabbalah is implemented in dance therapy practices, it is not very common at all. I did a lot of research for this, and I found one dance therapist in the DC area who does interventions and does like sessions with Kabbalah specifically in her dance therapy, and that was one person. I really struggled to find others. There were a couple others, like maybe they'll have like a session, but it really is not a very popular idea yet, but I think it should be. Jewish women in particular may have a unique, intimate relationship with movement and spirituality, as seen from like the biblical passages, divine femininity, just using dance as a way to reclaim the body as a mode for emotional communication. It's their own, and sometimes that can get like lost when we interact with our surroundings. So therefore, it really does beg more attention because these reasons. Now, I do understand, I want to recognize, I've been speaking in the gender binary for this entire presentation with a focus on women. However, this research really is applicable for anybody who's spiritually inclined or anybody really just looking for like a more intimate connection with their like inner self. I've been speaking in the binary because I've been using biblical passages and everything, which we know was all like binary, gender binary. But anybody really who is spiritually inclined to interact with life on like a soul level, and they provide an avenue directly to their psyche and inner self. That's how they go about their life. And like after learning about Kabbalah, like it really gives me another meaning and like how I carry myself. So I think that's like a really cool avenue that you can just like go straight to the heart of it. Therefore, spirituality is deeply personal for many. It's like very intimate part of their lives. So such access opens dance movement therapy practices to a whole nother level of potential connection with clients. Yeah, good timing. That's all. I'm happy to field any questions. I know I just threw a lot of information at you, so anything, like I'm happy to answer. Yes.
Why do you think you hadn't heard of that growing up in like the Jewish community?
That is a great question. Kabbalah used to be a very protected, like hidden sort of like tradition. There were rules around it. We're back like several hundred years ago. You had to be a rabbi or a prominent person in your community. You had to be over age 65. You had to be married. Like there were all these rules around it. Couldn't be a woman to learn it. And then yeah, there was like a lot of that mess going on several hundred years ago. And then as like society developed and people started going out throughout the world, and it wasn't just like one community in Europe, it was like now surrounded around the world, people recognized that you really needed your own connection in order to like survive. And everybody started agreeing, everybody needs access to this information. This is like integral for like you and like your well-being and your connection to like your own divinity. So it became much more popular. However, there are still some people who believe in this older concept that like, no, you can't learn it, it's hidden. But that is not the general understanding. So in my high school, it was that concept that like, no, this is still protected. You need to like treat it with very much like care and like go about it in a very specific way. And then I studied abroad, I like went out to other places, and everybody was like, dude, how do you not know about this? Like, what have you been doing with your life? And I'm like, I don't know. So yeah, it kind of really just depends on like the mindset of people, if it's still in that like older, like dated kind of, yeah. Good question though, it's something for sure. Yeah, anything else? Yes.
How can you kind of, I mean, this is an open-ended question, but how can you inform people of this practice, given the fact that like religion, beliefs, and even movement can be such a vulnerable idea for people? And it could like maybe be, because I remember our professor talking about like even just palms up is like extremely vulnerable. Yeah. How do we introduce this to people as a way of helping them and discovering themselves, kind of?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Interpret that how you want.
No, I appreciate, thank you. I, like, in my opinion, I think the best thing that we could do, or that I could do, or other people who are interested in this topic, would be to share that information with people without like expecting them to now reciprocate, but giving them those tools so that if they feel comfortable in their own time, in their own space, like however they feel comfortable implementing it at whatever rate, then they would have like the ability to do so. So just kind of informing them and like giving them the opportunity to, but not like expecting it. Mm-hmm. That'd be my way to go about it. Yeah. We good? Mm-hmm. Amazing. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.